Well. Here's a video that I didn't have to make for another 2 weeks, but something came up and kind of forced my hand to put this out 2 weeks earlier than it really needed to be worked on. So if this thing seems a little bit rushed, you know why. Anyways, let's check out this brand new case from Cooler Master. It's the NR200P MAX. It's got a built-in power supply and 280mm AIO. So let's take a proper look at this case. Let's get into it. This case doesn't launch until September 16th. It's not going to be available in every region at that time or whatever, but you know, September 16th is the release for this case. It was the original embargo for this case, but as I mentioned in the intro, because a few other factors came up, we were given the green light to publish this video whenever we could. So because that embargo has been broken, we're here. So we might as well pull it apart and show you what makes the NR200P MAX tick. And I also just want to add as well, I've had this case sitting here for about 2 months since just before they announced it. So yeah, I've been waiting to do this for quite a long time. It's a blessing in disguise, but at the same time, a little bit annoying because now we've got to rush out something that isn't up to our regular standards of quality. Let's rip it apart. All right, ladies and gents, let's start off with panel removal. Now, because this is based on the NR200, it's not the same case internally, but most of the stuff on the outside is the same. Panel removal is the same, and I'm saying this, I've never pulled it apart. Mind you, I already said we've had to rush this video. There's a couple things inside, much like the NR200. You probably noticed there's some stuff already installed in here. Let's pull out these roll of hot dogs. There you go, Binny, you'll love that. Here we go, all right. Box of everything, we'll come back to all of that in a moment. There's a bunch of padding and whatnot on the inside to stop stuff moving around because, ladies and gents, this has a power supply already installed and it has a 280mm AIO built in as well. So if you're thinking this sounds familiar, you would be correct. This is like the NZXT H1, except the radiator is twice the size and this case is cheaper. You heard that right, it's cheaper. The great thing about this case so far is a lot of the cable management is already done for you. This is kind of like a bare bones type of thing. So we're gonna build this as quickly as possible when we build it. The backside panel is the same story here. You just pop it off, pull it off, and away you go. And you can see that that power supply is pre-installed. All the cable management runs are already done. So the only thing you need to do is basically plug in your fan header to your motherboard and plug in all the other stuff into your board and away you go. This is a very nice and elegant solution if you want an NR200 type of system. So popping off the front panel isn't as necessary on the Max because the only reason why you would do this now is for cable management purposes only. You can probably already see that the case itself is this nice gray color. It's got a really nice gray finish. I love gray cases in general. I've said this millions of times on the channel in many videos, so you know, it's not news to anyone. That's just what I like. I like what I like. In terms of the included accessories, we've got a riser cable. Now this one is special and the key nut out there would have noticed that this is a PCIe Gen 4 riser cable because you can only mount GPUs vertically in this case. And finally, a case with an included Gen 4 riser cable. It's also got all of the regular case stuff as well. There is also all of the mounting gear for both AM4 and Intel LGA sockets because it does have that included cooler. So it comes with the thermal paste and everything else you need to get up and running in this case. There's also additional SATA or SATA power and Molex power if you're going to be using that in this system as well. And last but not least, a power cord because yeah, you need that to turn the system on because it's got an integrated power supply. Look at that, ladies and gents. If you've never seen an Australian power plug before, that's what our socket looks like. Hello, I'm a power man.
Are you okay?
The included power supply is a Cooler Master 850 watt V-Gold V2. It's an 80 plus gold SFX power supply. It's a power supply we've used quite a lot in the past, and on its own, it is actually quite expensive, but it's been rolled into the price of this case, which we're going to get to towards the end of the video, and you'll find that this is rather good value for what it is. The power supply also has fully modular cables, and what they've done here rather than give you those standard cables with other power supplies that you would find, it's got those nice sleeved Cooler Master cables that you get from their sleeved kits, so you can make it look nice and clean as well. I'll just pop it off really quickly and we can have a bit of a gander. The cables that are pre-installed should be enough to get you up and running for most systems. So you've got your 24-pin power connector, some SATA or SATA power for your 2.5-inch SSDs or your spinning rush drives. You've got your PCIe power, and the EPS power connector is already pre-routed, so you don't need to worry about cable managing that. It's in the right spot, ready to go. As mentioned in the intro, the NR200P MAX features a 280mm AIO that is pre-installed in the case at the top, which is the optimal position for an AIO. Really good that Cooler Master has listened and redesigned the internals of this new MAX case. There's one other thing that they did was they actually made the AIO tubes a lot longer than they need to be. And as you can see, they route down and then up. They're like really, really long and in the optimal position to then mount the CPU cooler just like that, right? That is a really nice, thoughtful way to do it. So you can tell that they've put a lot of time, they've put a lot of time into planning out where everything goes in this case. I think Cooler Master over the last couple of years has kind of been listening a lot more to the community. And that's something I can appreciate since I've been building PCs for over 25 years. So seeing that companies listen to just little things and little grievances we have is a nice touch. Also, keep in mind, ladies and gents, if you're building with the NR200P MAX, see what the sticker says? Remove label before installing, well, install rather. Yep, I'm gonna do that right now. So you don't have to ask whether or not I did it through the build process because you're watching me do it right now. There it is, nice and exposed. Front panel connectivity, pretty standard fare here. There's not a lot, which is actually a good thing. You've got your USB 3.0 front panel connector, you've got your front panel audio, and the connector for all your front panel switches and lights and everything to let you know your system's on in a convenient little block, the same as the regular NR200 as well. So how about GPU installation in the NR200P MAX? This one's also quite easy as well. There's a few screws, and you would notice that usually with the NR200, you can load the GPU in through the hole in the front of the case, which is still there because the outside chassis is the same, the internals are different. But installing the GPU is fairly straightforward. You remove these screws here, and then you remove these other two screws. So one down the bottom here, one up here. You can pull out this GPU bracket, and what this allows you to do is then mount the GPU to this, and then slide the GPU in from the back and load it in, and then obviously plug it into your motherboard and whatnot. But this is Cooler Master listening to the community again, I reckon, with making this a lot easier. If the original had this, this would have been really, really cool. But in the floor of the case here, it appears you can probably mount some fans of your own. I'm gonna say it's going to be 120mm fans, and you're probably going to need slim fans just based on what I can see here with the height of the GPU being mounted in here. I mean, we're not gonna do that in this video, basically because I wanna test the thermals in this stock configuration and really not with any other type of configuration. Well, at least not yet. On the left-hand side, we've got the NR200. This is obviously that nice bluey greeny kind of one that everyone loves. And here we've got the NR200P MAX. Now, the first thing you're noticing straight off the bat is this one's got a cooler built in, and this one obviously doesn't. What they've done here to make this 280mm cooler fit, which I'll show you from another angle as well, is they've moved the motherboard tray from this location here to be much lower down as it is on the NR200P MAX. So, I mean, this is on a level plane, and you can see that, you know, this is higher, this one's lower. And this is how they're able to fit a rad, well, rather a 280mm rad right up the top here, right? And that's the major difference that you're seeing internally. The rear tells more of the same story as well. You can see that the cutouts for the I/O much higher on the NR200, and on the MAX much lower. They've also inverted the power socket from being at the top to being down the bottom, so that adds extra space as well. You'll also notice that the vertical GPU mounting is completely different. It's a lot further down here than it is on this one, whereas this one you've got two options for GPU mounting. You can either mount them vertically or you can mount them horizontally down here, whereas with the Max you've only got one option, and that is to mount it vertically only, with that included PCIe Gen 4 riser cable. And lastly, you'll notice because they've dropped all of the hardware, they were able to change the top brackets of the case here to allow for radiator mounting at the top. Now, I'm gonna come back to another video to see how much of this we can convert over to a regular NR200, but already from eyeing out what I can see, basically just the top rails that hold in the radiator, and that's basically it. The rest of the internals of the case are much lower slung than this. So, and it's just a bit of extra trivia for you. If we take a look at the top panel for the Max, and then we take a look at the top panel for the non-Max, they're exactly the same, except the Max doesn't have the rubber grommets, but yeah, they didn't change that at all. The NR200P MAX also includes a TG side panel if you felt like putting glass on your small form factor PC, which I'm not gonna do because, yeah, I wouldn't be using it like this, but we will be testing with the glass just in case anyway. That's basically everything you need to know about the Cooler Master NR200P MAX. But what we're gonna do now is we're gonna build it, we're gonna test the thermals, and then I'm gonna let you know what I think about this new case from Cooler Master. So let's get into it. But I'm gonna be doing this one with a bit of a twist, which you're about to see. But let's start building. Here's the twist. I'm gonna build in the NR200P MAX. I'm not gonna cut the footage, and we're gonna see how long it takes with a little timer on the screen. Obviously, we're gonna speed everything up, but I guess my timer starts now. Alright ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this build in the Cooler Master NR200P MAX. But let's take a look at the thermals. What you're seeing on screen right now is the thermals of this case are predictably quite excellent. Now, one thing I did notice was the GPU temperatures with the glass at idle were a bit lower. I think that's to do with the fact that it's glass, but when it's under load, the GPU in this blower design does benefit quite a lot from that side panel being open or with the mesh side panel. And the reason why I picked this GPU was because this is something that I haven't been able to test with this type of case before because we don't have any blower cards. Now I've got a blower, hardly know her. Yeah, so overall, I think the thermals are quite good. And as you've seen here, it's much, much better if you decide to use the mesh side panel. Well, anyway, with a blower cooler. All right, let's chat about the parts. Now, this is kind of interesting. All the footage that you saw in the video of me like putting hardware on the motherboard and everything is not actually what's in here for one reason. You guys know that the embargo got completely smashed and destroyed, so we had to get this video out as quickly as possible. The footage is footage from another video that uses similar hardware, so we have the same motherboard, same RAM, same drive. The only difference here is the CPU. The reason why I swapped the CPU out is Once I actually put this together and I booted it up and I was about to start testing, I realized it had the 11600K on it, but I wanted the 11900K. I thought this had an 11900K on it. I actually didn't look at it because I was just in a rush to get everything up and running, whatever. I swapped the CPU out and then started the testing. So I didn't film me swapping the CPU out. I just got it done. Anyways, the CPU is the Intel Core i9 11900K. We put the 11900K on the MSI B560i Edge gaming Wi-Fi. To cool it, well, I mean, what else can we use? It's the built-in 280mm Cooler Master AIO, and it appears to be good. The RAM is 16 gigs of G.Skill Triton Z Royal at 5333 megahertz. Yep, it's the fastest kit we've got. The GPU is the Gigabyte RTX 3090 Turbo Edition. It's a very, very, very loud blower card, but I wanted to know how this thing thermally performed because it's the first time I've used this card ever. So I just had to know. Obviously, the power supply and everything else is integrated into the case, so we don't need to talk about it. Which leads me into the next thing. What do I think about the Cooler Master NR200P MAX? This is probably the easiest small form factor case to build in that I've ever built in. In fact, it is almost quicker to build in this than the NZXT H1. This case, it has so much thought put into it. It's excellent. Cable management's excellent because you don't need to do any of it. It's already there. It took me 15 minutes flat to build this, and I wasn't trying to go fast. This was me just going, yeah, you know, blah, 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 blah. You can slow the footage down yourself and you'll see that I'm just like, blah, 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 like I'm just taking my time with it. And 15 minutes with me taking my time. Imagine if I was trying to do it fast. The real idea behind this case from Cooler Master was to offer a, let's call it a bare bones solution that obviously doesn't have a motherboard or GPU or whatnot, but have what you need to get up and running. And I think that, and I know people are gonna say, oh, you're such a Cooler Master shill, whatever. I think they've kind of nailed it because in terms of the pricing for this thing, and this is where this excels, right? The US price is 349 US dollars and the Aussie price is 500 Aussie dollars. Now just think about this for a second, right? Just think about what I'm saying here. You're getting the NR200P, which has the TG glass panel, right? You're getting an 850 watt SFX power supply, which they're expensive as it is, and you're getting a 280mm AIO. I think they've got the price pretty right. Now, when the NZXT H1 came out, I said, look, you know, this is good value because of this stuff. This blows it out of the water in terms of value. What more can I say? Like, we already know how good the NR200 is already. I don't have to tell you how good it is. You already know. But this is better because it's less work. Now, for the purists out there who want to do their own builds and do all the cooling and whatever they want to do, this is definitely not for you. But this is a case for someone who doesn't want to do any of that. They just want to put their motherboard in, put the GPU in, and be good to go. And for me personally, sometimes that's me. Most of the times it's not, but I can see the wide appeal for this case. Now, a few other things that I noticed while building with this, I was thinking to myself, can you actually convert a regular NR200? Yes and no. The motherboard tray is riveted in. If you were willing to drill out rivets and, you know, move it yourself, I'm sure you could mod the case to do it yourself. The other problem you're gonna have is mounting the radiator to the top. So these radiator brackets on the top of this case will fit into a normal NR200. I don't think that's gonna be a problem. This is quite literally gonna be the only thing stopping you, right? Is this panel here, where you've got the cutout for the rear I/O, you cannot move this panel up or down. So more than it being an internal change, it's actually a bit more of an external change to make this work. So a lot of the tooling is exactly the same, except for this back panel here, because the top panel can be modded, no problem, but it is this. It's this. This is the problem. The next question people are going to have is, why doesn't Cooler Master just sell this case without the power supply and the AIO? The answer is, who says that they're not going to do that in the future? I'm not confirming that they're going to do that because I actually have no idea, but if this thing does well enough, it would just make sense for them to do that. And they can't sell a conversion kit because it's far too complicated for the regular person who wants to drill out rivets and whatnot. But if they sold like an NR200P V2 that did this at a good price, mind you, and there's nothing saying that it wouldn't cost exactly the same price as the regular NR200P if they did a V2, that would be the highest selling small form factor case of all time. Easily, hands down, Cooler Master would win it. So if you're listening, Cooler Master, which I definitely know you will be, make the NR200P V2. Sound off in the comments. Make sure Cooler Master makes this case, because I can tell you now, I'll want all of those in every single color you can imagine, because that would be sick. Imagine that blue case, Claire, right?
Right.
White interior, put a 280mm AIO up the top, all white components, porn. Straight up porn. Anyways, guys, yeah, let us know in the comments what you think about this thing. It's interesting that Cooler Master went this route. I can see they did it from a packaging and pricing perspective, and I completely get who this is aimed towards, and thermally this thing is rock solid. So I think they've done a pretty good job with pricing it and with thermal performance. Imagine what it would be like if we chucked some fans underneath the GPU as well, which we're gonna do in another video, but for now, yeah, this is what you got, so you're gonna have to live with it. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers, you peak, we seek, and $349, I don't think that is too much to ask for someone who wants everything ready and raring to go. Thanks for watching. Oh, how could I forget? It's time to engage cinematic mode. Let's go.